All right. Let me see if we're online. This one has to be on. Let me see. Boom, boom, boom. How do I sound like guitar? Listening now. Okay. I think it will be okay. So, welcome everybody to the BTB Shodcast episode 4. I think we're getting a bit along and I'm getting the hang of it. So today we're going to talk about the animal brain, especially how it influences our day-to-day life. So I'm going to talk a bit about how did our brain evolve. The second thing I want to talk about is how do these different parts of our brain regulate us, or how do they let us thrive within our environment, I would say. What do they do for us? And the third question I want to ask a bit is how would we use our brain, and what ideal or what does our brain need of us, like what should we do with it? So without further ado, let's go into the first question. How did our brain evolve? So I think we all know that we are not the first species to use its brain. So the brain is something that evolved throughout the years or the generations. So the brain is mainly an organ that processes incoming information. There is an input, and then it kind of operates, or it translates that input into a corresponding output. And that is basically, in a nutshell, what a brain does. So input translates output. And this input then obviously comes from an environment, and the translation within is mostly experience, genetics, and other factors that influence what we do with this input and how it corresponds into a nice output. So it's an internal process. We have multiple, I would say, networks or functions of our brain, and this we can identify in sets or states, I would say. So I would say that we have like 3 states of brain, or evolutions of our brain, and you can see them like a bit like an onion. Like the center, the core is the most primal layer that evolved the longest ago, and each time we add a new layer on top that functions within the set of rules that is defined by the lower layer. So the lower layer feeds information to the higher layer. The higher layers take that information, do something else with it, and then we have a third layer on top of that one. That is the most recent one, and this is actually what allows us to do more complex stuff in life. So that is one analogy. Another one is, for example, that we are like a very sophisticated algorithm. So an algorithm uses inputs. We have a lot of different inputs, how the weather is, how we're feeling, did we sleep well. All these different inputs are getting feed into the system or into the algorithm, and then it evokes an output, something that we do with it. So other animals use, or with the onion example, use the lower layers of the brain that I described, or like a previous version of this sophisticated algorithm, in order for us to understand the environment, of course. And just like any animal, we want to use optimal use of the environment, make optimal use of the environment. That was the sentence I was looking for. But this is not unique to us humans. I think every animal or every organism wants to optimize for their environment. Sorry for the voice crack. I just turned 16 last night. So. Anyway, it is important to note that each of these layers is involved with the behavioral output. Some layers can act on their own. Some layers need or feed information to higher levels. Some higher levels can be able to inhibit certain lower levels. I'll go into that a bit deeper later. But you can look at it like this, like the lower layers they receive the information, they are the first defense, the first processing that has been done, and they are like the playing field. Like we have the playing field, the players, and then the top layer is the one that is the orchestrator or the coach or something, is the one that says, okay, you go run there, you do that, you do this. And actually some players or fields are already set up that nicely, but sometimes we have to take full control of it and be able to be like, okay, I will do this, and this. You have to stand there, blah, blah, blah. This is not the best analogy, but I just want to point out that the top layer, so we have the bottom or the lower layer, the middle layer, and the upper layer. So the top layer, the upper layer is able to be like a coach or a conductor, as you say, for an orchestra. It's like, okay, violins you play at that time, bass you play at that time, trumpet you play at that time. It's able to send impulses to these other lower layers and be able to take control of them if necessary. So these 3 layers, we can also say that they're like previous versions of our brain, or how others would say, older versions of our brain. The reptilian brain, for example, is the most old one, the most primal one. It's the core of what we do. Then we have the mammalian brain, which is basically on top of the reptilian brain, and it allows us for more complex stuff. And then we have the human brain, which is an adaptation of this second layer into a more specific third layer. But we'll get into that a bit later. So important to notice is a lower layer, middle layer, upper layer. So lower, in the information flows from lower to upper, in that sense. All right, that was how we how did our brain evolve a bit. So we have these 3 layers now. How do they regulate us within our own environment? So I'll first start with the reptilian brain, which is the lower layer. As I've said, it's the most old and primitive part of our brain. It's what evolved the first, I would say, or what they would say. And it's just something very basic. It functions like survival, intuition. No, sorry, intuition is not there. It just regulates basic survival functions. For example, breathing, heart rate, our temperature, and digestion is also one. So basically everything that you unconsciously do without even thinking about it. You just eat foods and it gets digested. You don't have to think about, okay, now I have to pass it from my stomach to my darms. No, intestines. No, it's just autopilot functions. So something you don't have to think about. Most of these impulses that get here are not sent to the higher levels. Like if you eat something, you don't have to think about it. It just, the most of these breathing, for example, everyday functions never reach the higher layers, but some do. For example, if you touch something or you see something important, these information gets transferred to higher layers, and there the corresponding response will be made, what to do with it. So as I said, we have this lower layer, it's autopilot function, but we can override it by the higher layers. One good example for this is take that you see this one popular guy or girl that you see at school, and your heart starts pounding. Like, you cannot reasonably say why it's pounding, because nothing really has changed. There are still people around you. There is not something that you feel hungry or fatigued all of a sudden. There's not much of a state change for you. You're pretty much the same, but all of a sudden your heart starts pounding and you're like, wait, how does this happen? Like, your middle layer, the second layer, actually takes control over your primal layer for normal heart beating. And it's like, okay, you like this girl or this guy, I want you to be more active, more pumped, as I would say. And this is nothing that is this is not something that is correspondive with the lower layer. If you want to start consciously analyze these different situations, you will be able to recognize which layer converts in which response, but it's not something you can only like. It's not obvious always. Sometimes I still have behavior that I'm like, wait, where did that come from? And yeah, you learn something new every day of your life if you start to zoom in or focus in on these behaviors that you experience or portray. So one of the main functions for the reptilian brain is this auto-functioning. Autopilot is just your body knows what to do when it gets certain impulses and you don't have to act on it. Another function is actually to detect threats. So for example, if somebody comes with a knife at you or something fast happens in the side of your eye, you will react to it instinctively. If you smell something and it smells bad, you will instinctively like pull away, like ugh. It's something you don't have to consciously think about. It's just happening when there is the input. And in that sense, your lower layers also has certain things they don't have to pass to the upper layers. Like some behavior or some actions can be taken already before upper layers have time to process it. It's something that they have authorized or an authorization for to do. So these are immediate responses. They can be linked with release of hormones. For example, adrenaline. If somebody comes with a knife at you, your heart rate will start to rise. Your blood pressure will go up. Your respiratory rate will go up. All for you to be able to react to this situation instinctively or reflexive. It's not something you have to consciously think about. So these are the main two functions, I would say, for the reptilian brain. So the autopilot and reacting to threat. Other functions you can say are like territorial or mating behavior that you're experiencing. I don't want to go into deep with this one because I think we can all have examples for ourselves how primal our behaviors can be when we are in such conditions, when somebody is threatening our territory or our mate. Everybody can act very primal, and I think this is one of the clear examples also of functions that lie within this area or within the lower layer. So to end off this lower layer, I want to say that it's maybe intuitive for most of us, but the lower layer is actually the closest physical to our sensor. So for example, your spine or the back of your head right here. All my hair is here. So the back of your head or the where the spine comes into your brain, that are the areas that resides or where the lizard brain is, as people would say, or the reptilian brain. It's the ones that are the closest to where your sensors are, and they can react the fastest, like literally, to what is happening. That's why they're located there. So the second part, is the mammal brain, or the middle layer, I would say. So this is an evolution that has been very complex, and I would say it has allowed us or mammals to be way more emotionally attached, or like being able to memorize way better things that are more complex. So it involves more emotionally thinking. So it's called emotional brain. It's how we can link emotions to things that happen to us, maybe from previous parts of us or previous experiences that we had, or with how we're feeling at that moment, or mood or motivation. It's all these feelings that we cannot really identify, but it does seep into the overall action that we do. If we're feeling happy in that day, we might start jumping up and down a little bit while we're walking outside. I don't know. It's just those little things that might influence our actions that we usually don't consciously think about. It's something that we feel. It can be like a gut feeling that we have. It's something we don't know how to explain or say why we think this thing, but we can feel good with it, or we can relate to it, or if we say, oh no, this looks bad, before we even know what is gonna happen, just because of the feeling, you know. I think it's not that hard to identify those things. But it's important to notice that it's also very complex. It's not just some 1 and 0 and one input in, one output out. Like I say, it's all the emotions, how you're feeling, how your memories are, how how you are wired and what you experience up until that point in your life. So what kind of parts are there in the mammalian brain? So this is especially the limbic system, so it's just outside the center where our reptilian brain stops, where one onion peel stops, the other starts. So just where the brain stem, so we have the spinal cord, which is my hand, then we have here the brain, then it's this part across where the stem is arriving that you can identify as the mammal's brain or the mammalian brain. And it also involves the cortex. So I'll talk about it a bit later about the cortex, but the cortex is basically where the more complex stuff happens. It has more room and more ability to cross wire and have different inputs each other, and this is way more complex the more you go to the outside. So the outside of our brain is where the more complex stuff happens. The inside of our brain is where the more intuitive, emotional, genetical things happen. It's where more of our programmed functioning is taking place. So I think it's important to notice the functions that mammalian brain specifically has. So we can identify the amygdala. This is a part of our brain in the center of somewhere that regulates emotional responses. For example, fear and anxiety, it's a big driver for a lot of our actions. And I think you can already understand how influential these parts or these brain parts are in our day-to-day life, how they can shape whatever we think or do for that day, and how we respond to certain situations, even though they might not seem logical to the higher, the upper layer. It can also provides you with an automated response to certain things. Even you're not really consciously processing it, but you felt like you have already processed it before, and it's an automated response that you know how to deal, how to cope with something. This all lays within these areas. We also have the hippocampus, I'm sorry. This is involved in the formation and retrieval of memory. So hippocampus is one of the most studied areas when it comes to mice and stuff. They easy to operate and be able to alterate these parts of how memory works, how we can retrieve it, how it's stored. It's all these areas that are being closely examined. And then the last part of this system is the hypothalamus. And hypothalamus is basically our physiological functioning. So basically when we have hunger, when we have thirst, or when we are in need of sexual behavior or sexual attention, these parts of our brain stimulates our desired output to make these things more likely to happen. So it can feed into our action to be, okay, if we're doing that, then we also have to go that way, because then we can stop there to get some food or something. It can be very subtle, and I can notice this in myself sometimes, that I try to implement such an idea with another idea in order to get one of these physiological functions fulfilled. So these are the two structures that evolved in mammalians. So the cortex, the outside of our brain, and then we have the inside, which can be the limbic system. So why were we able to create these complex interactions, or these complex interactions between our brain areas when we evolved to be a mammal? This is because there was a new development of neurons. When we now had synapses. Synapses are basically the gap in between two neurons. So we have two neurons. My two hands are like one neuron, and there's like a gap in between where they don't physically meet. There's actually area in between where liquid can be and where different molecules can be released. So one of these neurons get activated, and then they release their message. So for example, if there is something positive, you want to send a positive message to the other neuron, this release a positive message or molecule that interacts with this next neuron at the synapse. So the synapse are the connections or the pathways, or not the pathways, not the physical connection between the liquid in between and the start or the end of one of the neurons. So as I've said, there are positive messages, but of course there are also negative messages, and they can also flow from both sides. So one can say, hey, I have a positive message for you, and this one gets the message and it's like, wait a second, I don't want this message, I'm gonna send a negative message back to never send me this positive message again. So this is basically how conditioning happens. You give a positive message, he receives a positive message, and it sends a positive message back. It's like a closed feedback loop. Okay, I like what you're sending, I like what I'm receiving and the output I'm giving, so I want this to be happening more frequent. That's basically what happened with the mammals and how we're able to learn, to memorize, and to adapt to our environments, especially when environments are changing more quickly than one generation, for example, within one generation, then a lot of things might not apply that we inherently have within us. For example, that we run away from an overflying thing. If there are planes, we learn to not run away from them because there are always planes and it's something normal. But if you're like an animal that never has seen a plane and it might come over you, you're like, oh shit, I'm about to die. This is the end for me. You know, this is how we learn to adapt to these different situations or environments. So the last part, the upper layer, is actually the one that defines us, the human brain, and it has evolved way later. It's not actually a physical difference. It's more of an enhancement of the cortex, and they call this the neocortex. So basically the new cortex or the improved cortex, and this is responsible for us higher cognitive functions. This allows us to create languages, abstract thinking, and art and stuff. But it is also involved in problem solving and decision making. So a lot of these more complex things that are out of one person's mind and involves societal or like more different inputs than just one person can ever produce. How we can manage this for an individual is what happens in our neocortex. It's what makes us possible to create these larger complex institutions and networks of people and thoughts to be able to form into something real. It's what sets us apart, and you might think, oh, ants do the same thing. They're part of this larger phenomena, but they're not really consciously involved. It's just hormones driving them to certain places, let them picking it up. It's their animal brain doing the work and the actual output or behavior that they express. So for us, we like to think that we have decision making in this and that we can choose our own thing, and that's maybe for another podcast if it's true or not. But basically, we like to think that we have the choice, that we like to be our own individual, and that we have our own values and norms that we want to follow by. So this is basically what differs us. It's not something physical with the mammals. We have similar brain structures and similar areas that are corresponding with them, but our, for example, neocortex is way more advanced, which is involved in, of course, in decision making, planning. Spatial awareness, for example, is also an area that has evolved or enhanced way better with us, and attention. And we can also have higher levels of visual processing. So pattern recognition, object recognition, these are all things that we are way better at than the normal mammal, I would say. And these allowed us to take more, to be able to enable us, it enabled us to be more proactive in our environment and take more advantage of our environment in order for us to be the dominant species in the world. It's what led us to make these kind of decisions and these kind of situations possible for us. I would not be podcasting here if we never developed this neocortex. We would just be monkeys in tribes, and we could be the smartest monkey out of the monkeys, but we still be monkeys, you know. Now we can say, okay, these areas have enhanced that much that we were able to separate ourselves by actually behavior and thoughts that we produced in comparison to the monkeys, I would say. But yeah, most of our day-to-day thoughts and behaviors all go through these layers, and they identify, and when they split off and where they get processed, it all defines who we are and how do we react. Some people might react emotionally to some things, other people might react intuitively to some things. It changes for everybody, or it's different for everybody, and that makes us, or me, or you. It's how we process these different income or inputs in a different layer or in a different way than another person would do, and that gives us another output, another thing we would say. You might say, hey, what's up? And I would say, yo, what's popping? Like, that's already two different things. That's just happened to be where you grew up and what friends you had around you. So I would say the human brain, to finish it off, is the part of you that you can actually take control of. It's the part of you that has the most control over your brain. It's the part of you that you can use to make you condition a certain way. I say condition, but actually, like, it's how we are as a person. If we don't condition ourselves for nothing, we are just emotionally reacting to everything. We don't have any grip or control over ourselves, and we just use our lower and middle layer only. But if we condition ourselves to think certain way or to act certain way, and we consciously make decisions based upon that idea, we will use our neocortex or our upper layer to make more informed decisions or solutions towards a broader or more complex idea than ourselves, or what goes on in our own brain. And I think that's the part that maybe not all of us use as much as we could have. I think I have not in the past used this much. I think I was very numbed out and very unemotionally I say unemotionally now, but I was not driven by a higher level of processing in my brain. Okay, I don't know what I'm saying in that part, but basically something I was not consciously working towards. It was just something that was happening to me. I was reacting to it, and that's basically first and second layer that I was using. So how do we use our brain then? How do I see, or how would I use my brain from now on? So of course, everybody can do or think whatever they want. Nobody should or should not do something based upon what I or every other person says. But I do think we, of course, are bound by societal norms and values. There are not such things as being able to go naked outside or something, especially not for all situations. For example, a nude beach is a place you can do it, but in general, of course, we cannot go naked outside. It's just something that is considered crazy or not fitting our society, and you would be taken out, or taken out of society very quickly. It's not something that they want to tolerate or that they want to promote. So there are things, of course, that you cannot do. But I want to point towards the other part, the more interestingly part, is that it's kind of a tool for us. We can be the orchestrator or the conductor, I wanted to say. We can be the conductor for our own orchestra. We can choose which instruments are playing at what time, how we're feeling. And I think it may give us a better, a more clear way of how we can do stuff if we consciously do the things we want to do and nothing goes to automated pilot anymore, like nothing serious that we care about goes to automated pilot anymore. Even something emotional, I think we still have to listen to our emotions because information still passes through it and it feeds into systems above it. But we also have to make the use of the systems above it to control the output we give. If somebody is sad or is angry, we should not always meet them with the same emotion. We can give complementary emotions or other solutions towards their problems, and it's something that we should strive for. It's something, I know it sounds super cheesy, but it's something that I want to set my mind on. I will not speak for everybody here, but I want to set my mind on using my higher level of processing more consciously, more actively, because doing this can actually result in getting some results that I want to get. I think that it's the most important factor actually of getting the result that you envision to get. It involves conditioning yourself in the way that you think you can reach a goal, and you have to lay out these steps for yourself and be like, okay, I want to actively take these steps in order to reach that goal. And if I don't reach that goal by these steps, I will find some different steps along the way. But not solving the problems around me or not being able to act actively on or consciously on them is, I think, a waste of my time anymore. I don't want to float down the river that much anymore. Sometimes I will let go, of course. I think everybody should, but for now I want to make more use of my brain than I used before. I think it's normal only to do that, because if you don't do it, you will literally become an animal and a monkey again. I mean, you de-evolve actually, not using the upper layer, not using the most important factor of what made us humans the most dominant species of the world. It's that drive, that drive for getting something more bigger than yourself. It's like a video game or a movie, and you may already envision the ending or know the ending, but you still have to go through the movie or to go through the video game, put in the hours, put in the grind. And I know it sounds weird because you say condition yourself, and conditioning is like, oh, Pavlov dog. I'm like, oh, I'm eating at a certain time, I have no free will. No, I'm not saying any of these things. It's like conditioning you in a way that you can enable yourself to be the best you can by actively using your brain. Okay, what can I control? What can I not control? Where do I see myself going? Would I be happy there? There are all different questions that you should actively be, or should consciously and actively work about. It's not something that happens to come to you. There's no millionaire that's like, yeah, except for the lotto, I guess. But yeah, we all know you're not that guy that's gonna beat in the lotto or winning the lotto. We all like to believe we're that guy, but it's not gonna happen, you know. And we cannot wait for such a thing to happen to you. Why would you like sit in the couch all day and then expecting you to win at some point in your life? You could be 60 and not win it. Like, what kind of life would you have then have? But anyway, I think to sum it up, especially for me, that my brain became numb and bored of my surroundings, of what I was doing, of what I was interested in, of what I was doing. I even said doing twice. You know, that's how important it goes. You know what I'm saying? It's getting pretty late. It's 33 minutes already. But I'm getting this done. So basically, I don't know where I was. Well, wait, what was I saying? Yeah, that we are getting bored with ourselves. So yeah, okay. I think the point is long gone now. But basically, we gotta stimulate ourselves. There's nothing in life that's gonna do it for us. There's no other person that's gonna come along with this perfect idea that fits your ideal of what you want to do in your life and how fulfilled you can get. there is no such thing that just comes along. Everything you want, you should actively and consciously go search it or chase it. And the only way I see possible for me for now is by conditioning myself in order to think, okay, I do have to face these solutions every time, and how do I reach it is through the work. I would not be doing all what I'm doing now. I don't say it's that much, but you cannot work and instantly expect something to happen. There's no short-term gratification in life in general. Like, we all like to watch reels all night long, and sometimes you might get bored of it and you delete the app or whatever, but in the end it's not gonna be something that we will be satisfied with our whole lives. It's not some cheat code for life. Okay, I just have to watch reels for the years of my life and then I will die a happy man. No, I don't think there's anybody in the world that actually believes that it's gonna happen to them. I think everybody just gets stuck into being this short-term monkey brain that doesn't allow us for more complex thinking, and we numb ourselves, we dumb down ourselves to, in order to maybe fit in or not speak up or not chase those wild, crazy dreams that we all have. Like, who would have thought I would actually be talking here about this shit a year ago? I don't, okay, a year ago maybe, but 5 years ago, I would not have envisioned myself doing this. I was just a brainless turbo badge doing some crazy, yeah, I would say gambling, I guess, stuff. But yeah, now we're here. I don't know where the next step is gonna be, but I conditioned myself, okay, I just have to do this over and over, and if it doesn't work out, I'm just gonna change it up, try something new. But if I'm not gonna try, I will never reach this satisfaction in the upper layer, I think. So anyways, I will end this with this. With this analogy, it's something that I figured out, or like, figured out sounds like it is such a whoa, mind-blowing thing to say. But basically, we are like a squirrel in this park, you know? I was sitting in the park, smoking a joint and just being myself, thinking about what the next topic would be, and I was like, wait, why? Like, we're so confined to our space and time that we don't use the time to think about anything else. We don't envision ourselves living somewhere else. I get that, but our mind does want to live somewhere else. We don't want to be stuck in our day-to-day life. Our mind wants to think about things that we might have get or that we can maybe achieve, the ifs and the buts. It's all about attacking, or how you say it, indulging in new things, getting new experiences, and seeing new solutions for existing problems. Or maybe you want to optimize a way that you live. There can be so many things in life that you're like, I can use my brain for this, but I think we all dumb down a lot of times, and don't allow our brains to take control of, to be the orchestrator or the conductor. We allow the orchestra to do their own thing. Like, okay, all the violins are like, oh, this sounds like a nice time to play, I'll just start playing, blah, 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 blah. And there's no overall picture or vision where this orchestra is going. There's just sound, but it's not music, you know? Music only comes from the higher, the upper level, I think. It's something that it's more complex than just sound together. It's more about a feeling, a way of how you look at things, an emotion that is triggered. I don't know, it's something universal, almost, like everybody can relate to it, you know? I think there's some types of music that everybody, or like a majority of people, can find interesting, or at least does something with them. Negative, positively, whatever, it doesn't matter. But anyway, I think that's it for me for today. Don't think there are any questions. I haven't heard anything on the Discord. Anyways, thank you for listening to another monologue of the BTB bench. I'm your host, and I see you guys very soon. Maybe with something new. I don't know. Thinking about it. but I will let you know. Anyways, ciao. Have a great evening, and yeah, just get the week done. Get that money, get that bread, do your thing, and do more. Just don't be content with your life. Search for something outside of it, outside of your zone.